Welcome back, I'm George, and in this video I'm going to show you the first things you need to do on your new AirPods Pro 3. I have customization settings, I have secret functionalities most people don't know, and I will also show you how you can measure your heart rate without having to start a live workout. So that being said, and without further ado, let's begin with the first thing you need to know about the new AirPods Pro 3. So as you've probably noticed, especially if you had older pairs of AirPods, there's actually no physical buttons on the case, which means there is not an obvious way to start a pairing mode or to reset the AirPods to give them to someone else. In this case, and I think this also applies to the AirPods 4, if you want to start a pairing mode, you have to double tap like this, and automatically you'll see a blue light that indicates that the pairing mode has started. Once you do this, the AirPods will show up as a Bluetooth accessory, even if it's not on an Apple device. Now, that being said, once you put the AirPods on your ears, you'll probably see right here on the control center, there is a new icon on the volume slider with the AirPods icon. Now, if you tap and hold right here, you'll find three controls at the bottom. First off, we have the listening mode, which can be either transparency, so you can listen to whatever's around you, adaptive, which is going to automatically determine whether to choose transparency or the noise cancellation, and third, the noise cancellation, which is essentially going to block all sounds from the exterior world. And it's so good, in fact, that I'm having a hard time listening to myself saying this with this feature on. Now, you also have a feature called Conversation Awareness, which is essentially going to let the AirPods try to find if you're having a conversation with someone and automatically switch between transparency and the noise cancellation mode, which is kind of the same thing as adaptive. It is automatically going to adjust depending on whether you're making any sounds, conversations, talking, or, well, whatever the algorithms determine on the iPhone. Now, something you should also know is that the AirPod Pro 3 buds have a lot of touch controls with this little slider right here. Okay, so it's a little tricky, but I'm going to try to demo this as best as I can. First of all, if you slide up like this, you'll see that the volume goes up. Then if you slide down, the volume will go down. There we go. Then if you press on the slider, the music will resume playing. And then if you tap again, the music will pause. All of these controls will have a slight haptic vibration, so you can notice the press on your ear. And then also, something you should know is that if you double tap, you will skip to the next song. And then if you triple tap, you'll skip to the beginning of the song. So you can essentially do everything you want regarding the song or podcast you're listening to right from the AirPods without having to take the phone out of your pocket. And well, needless to say, you probably already know, this little bar is available on the right earbud and on the left earbud, and you can do the same things with both. Now, that being said, I'm going to put the AirPods back on because I want to show you how you can do a heart rate scan with your AirPods. So let's come here to the home screen on your iPhone. Let's then tap on the Health app, which you can probably find on your Spotlight if you don't find it on your home screen. Then you want to scroll down to where it says Show All Health Data. There we go. Then you want to tap on Heart Rate, which may not be at the top. You may have to scroll down a little bit until you find it, but you have to tap on Heart Rate. And automatically the AirPods and the iPhone are going to perform a heart rate scan right in that moment. As you can see, the latest is at 2303, and it is 2303 at night. So yeah, it's essentially my heart rate right now, 78 BPM. And well, even though there's not like a button you can press to redo the heart rate scan, as you can see, it is essentially updating every minute. So even though it is not like, there's not a way to actually refresh automatically in that same moment, the phone is doing it every 15 to 30 seconds. And well, also, if you wear your AirPods regularly, you'll see that here on week and month, you'll find a full analysis with your average heart rate when you're sleeping and when you're awake. So the more you wear the AirPods, the more information you'll have on your heart rate. And this Once again, it's updating on the background as you live without having to do anything, and you can always come here to check. Now, that being said, something a lot of people get wrong, when you put the AirPods on your ears and tap on the camera app to record a video, that doesn't mean that the AirPods are going to capture the audio automatically. In fact, by default, even when you have your AirPods, the iPhone is going to use the mics on the phone to record the video. Now, if you want to change the microphones to the AirPods microphones, you have to swipe down right here on the control center, then tap on Camera Controls, and then tap on a menu called Input, which I don't have on my iPhone for some weird reason, and then change from iPhone microphone to AirPods microphone. Now, once again, this should be on your phone. It is kind of weird that it's not on my iPhone, but as long as you have iOS 26 and you have either the AirPods Pro 3, the AirPods 4, and I think the AirPods Pro 2 work as well, you can select the input on the control center. But anyways, that being said, and before we move on, I actually have something for you watching this video. This right here is the Ugreen NAS DH2300, a small home setup to store all of your data in files without having to pay for expensive and unsafe cloud storage services. It offers up to 60 terabytes of storage, which is good for 20 million pictures or 40,000 movies, so a lot. And it is faster than any cloud service with up to 125 megabytes per second. It quickly connects to your phone via NFC, it can back up your iPhone library automatically, and you can let different people use the NAS with varying levels of access. But I have to say, my favorite feature is that you can set it up as a RAID, which means that if one of the hard drives fail, you can still keep all of the data, making it really good for storing valuable information like your old photos. If you're interested in checking it out, as always, I left a link down below in the description. Thank you, Ugreen, for sponsoring this video. But anyways, that being said, and moving on, let's now tap on the settings, then tap right here on your AirPods, which will have whatever name you've used for your AirPods. And here you'll see a very long list of controls to customize your AirPods in many, many cool ways. So first of all, you'll see a little widget that shows the battery you have both on your case and on the earbuds. I think in my case it's not showing because it was open. There we go, it has 75%. You can also, as you can see, change the name of your AirPods to anything you want. You can call them Brad Pitt. But be careful, because if you lend your AirPods to someone else or if they connect to another device, this is the name that's going to show on that device. So yeah, don't name it anything too crazy. A little bit below, as you can see, you have the transparency, adaptive, and noise cancellation options I showed you on the control center. And that you can also change from the settings, but it's much more complex to come all the way here than to swipe down and do it from the volume setting. A little bit below, you have the option to enable the hearing protection, which I think will be turned on by default, and that will essentially increase the noise cancellation when there is a very loud sound around you. Now, something that's also very interesting is that you can take a hearing test right from your home with your AirPods to determine whether you have any hearing issues or problems that you should know about, which is actually a pretty big deal when you're younger, because if you know you have a slight hearing issue early on, you can prevent it from getting worse over time. But anyways, that being said, let's get back to the AirPods Pro 3 because there is a lot more to cover. So let's get back to the settings, then swipe down from the previous hearing test option I was showing you before, because as I said before when I was showing you the touch controls, the functionality by default is going to be the same on the right and left earbud, but you can change that. In fact, I actually forgot to tell you about one of the biggest functionalities with the earbuds touch controls, which is to tap and hold to go from transparency to noise cancellation. As you can see, it is now on noise cancellation, but if I tap and hold, it is going to go back to transparency, and if I tap and hold again, it is going to go, well, back to noise cancellation. As I said, this functionality is available on both earbuds by default. They can both do the switch between transparency and noise cancellation. But if you come here to the settings, you can actually choose whether, say, the left earbud does that functionality or activates Siri. So you could theoretically have one earbud change between transparency and noise cancellation, and the other earbud could work as a Siri remote controller. Now, as you can see a little bit below, we have the call controls. So you can answer a call by pressing once right here on the touch-sensitive surface of the earbud. Then you can also mute or unmute your voice on a phone call by either pressing once or pressing twice. You can choose. And finally, you can choose whether to end the call by pressing once or pressing twice. Of course, if you choose pressing once, then mute and unmute is going to be pressing twice. And then if you choose pressing once for mute and unmute, the other one's going to reverse because, of course, you can't be doing the two things with one action. Now, a little bit below, we have the camera control section, which is probably my favorite on this whole settings page. If you tap on camera remote, you'll be able to activate the camera shutter by pressing once or pressing and holding. In my case, I prefer to press once. So as you can see, when you're on the camera app and you press the touch control, the phone is automatically going to take a picture, which can be incredibly useful when you're trying to take a group photo with many, many people and the phone is propped up in some kind of chair, desk, or whatever. Traditionally, people would use a 3 to 10 second countdown to take a quick picture, but that was actually awkward because you had to run all the way back to the group, and then, sometimes you were not able to do it on time. It was kind of uncomfortable to do it that way. So with the AirPods remote control, you can comfortably set up the phone, come back to the group, choose your place, set up a good pose to look good on camera, and then finally tap the button when you're ready. And just like that, you'll take the picture. Now, if we scroll down a little bit more, you'll find the audio options. In this case, first of all, you can personalize the volume, which even though it says personalize and it feels like you have some kind of control, it is actually automizing the volume because when you turn it on, the phone is going to automatically determine how much volume you should be using with your AirPods depending on your surroundings. And I'm not a big fan of this feature because it doesn't really adjust to what I want. Now, a little bit below, we have the automatic ear detection, which is going to be turned on by default. When this feature is turned on and your AirPods are not on your ears, they will not be detected by the phone. So as you can see, the controls are not showing up right here, and you will not be able to use them as a remote for your camera or as, well, a microphone when you're recording video because they are going to turn off by default. If you turn it off, as you can see, the AirPods are going to show up on the menu, even though they are not on my ears or they are not being used technically. But once again, if you're trying to use your AirPods as a remote controller or as a remote audio device to capture audio, then I think it's better to turn it off. Essentially, so you don't have to be pressing and covering the proximity sensors on the buds so they activate and you can use them as a remote controller or as a microphone or whatever. When this is turned off, they will always be enabled and ready to use, even the touch controls, which in some cases can be very useful. Now, a little bit below, you have the option to connect to the iPhone automatically, in this case, your iPhone, which of course is going to make the AirPods automatically connect to your device all the time. If you tap on when last connected to this iPhone, they are only going to connect to your iPhone if it was the last device they connected to. So in this case, if you lend your AirPods to someone else, your AirPods are automatically going to connect to that other person's device instead of yours. I guess this can be useful if you're going to let someone else use the buds for a week or a month, but if you're the one that's using the AirPods, I suggest you leave it on automatically. Now, a little bit below, we have the spatial audio control, which is actually an underrated feature on the AirPods because essentially it is going to learn about your head and your ears and your surroundings to give you the best audio experience possible. If you want to use spatial audio, you have to tap right here on Personalized Spatial Audio, tap right here on the blue Personalized Spatial Audio, and then the phone is going to run you through the spatial audio setup, which is going to take a couple minutes. As you can see, once it recognizes my face, it is going to ask me to rotate my head I guess, to learn about my head shape and structure. I'm not really sure why it's asking me to do this, but it essentially is going to learn about my head structure to improve the audio quality. So if you do this on paper, you're going to get a better listening experience with your AirPods Pro 3. As you can see, it was a pretty fast process. Let's tap on done, and automatically, just like that, I will have a more immersive audio experience thanks to the AirPods knowing the shape of my head. Now, a little bit below, you have the microphone settings. So you can choose when you're using the AirPods as a microphone, if you want to automatically switch between the two, or if you want to always use the left one or the right one. But in this case, I think automatically is the best since they are both the same quality. And I feel like automatically is going to let the iPhone choose the one that's going to give you a better audio quality. Now, a little bit below, we have another very interesting option called pause media when falling asleep that is going to be turned off by default, but that I highly recommend you turn on. When this feature is enabled and you have your AirPods on, they will automatically pause media when you fall asleep at night. This can be very helpful for those of you who fall asleep listening to a podcast or to music with your AirPods on. Up until this moment, you were forced to listen to more podcasts or more music for the whole night because you had the AirPods on your ears. But from now, you'll be able to automatically switch the whatever you were listening off so it doesn't disturb your sleep in any way. Now, a little bit below, we have an option called head gestures, which is something you also have to turn on using Face ID. And that is going to let you accept a phone call by moving your head up and down, or decline/dismiss a phone call by moving your head side to side. Now, a little bit below, you have the battery section where you can choose whether you want to use an optimized charge, which I recommend you do, and charging notifications, which I also recommend you do. Those are the typical, pop-ups that show at the top, telling you how much battery life you have on the AirPods. And well, also something to keep in mind, a little bit below, we have the Show in Find My option. If you tap right here, the AirPods are going to show up right here on the list of all of your Apple devices, so you can find them or play a sound when you lose them at home. Let's tap right here. They are going to now play a sound, and it is a very piercing sound. You cannot hear it because it's playing on the buds, but it is very, very loud. Theoretically, they could be, 50 miles away, and they would play a sound when you tap on this button right here. And of course, you can also have your directions to find the AirPods if you lose them. Now, a little bit below, right here on Accessibility, you also have the option to choose a pressing speed, which is going to determine the speed required to press 2 or 3 times on the AirPods. So by default, you have to be kind of fast, but if you tap on slower or slowest, you can tap 2 or 3 times with a little bit more time, so to say, and the AirPods are still going to detect a double or triple click. Now, a little bit below, right here on spatial audio head tracking, you can turn on follow iPhone, which is, I think, turned on by default. And I also think is essential for the spatial audio. So the thing that I showed you before where I scanned my face, if that's turned on, I think this is going to turn on by default because it only works if the phone is tracking your face movements. Then a little bit below, you can also control the tone volume for all the little sounds the AirPods make, which is very nice because I find it to be kind of loud by default. Then below, you have the volume control swipe option, which I'm not really sure why it's even an option. I think it is turned on by default. You want to have it turned on. I don't think it makes any sense to turn it off because you would lose that functionality where you can automatically change the volume with the touch control on the buds. Now, a little bit below, right here on Fit and Comfort, you can actually test the acoustic seal, which is very useful. As you probably know, the AirPods Pro have these cushiony silicone tips, and they come in different sizes. If you choose tips that are too big, they are going to be uncomfortable, and if you choose tips that are too small, the noise canceling option is not going to work. So by testing the acoustic seal, you can see whether your silicone tips are the right size or too small or too big, so you can have a confirmation that those are the right ones for you. Then a little bit below, you have right here on privacy, the option to measure your heart rate, which should also be on by default. I think it is, well, one of the main selling points on the AirPods Pro 3, so why would you not want to have it on? And then all the way at the bottom, you just have some information about the product. The name, the model number, the serial number, and the specific version, which are actually very interesting and useful if you're going to sell them in the future. And well, that being said, I think that's everything you needed to know about the AirPods Pro 3. If you have any questions regarding anything that I said in the video, please let me know down below in the comments. And if not, I hope you have an amazing rest of the day, and I hope to see you again very soon. Peace.